Chairman.
Honourable Peter Dunn.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to take a call at this point because I have another commitment very shortly, which will mean I'm absent for a little while, but I will come back. But I want to respond to the points that have been made by the two members that have spoken. I've read the Labour Party's minority report with some interest. It's a fairly brief report, and it's really a thinly disguised argument for a capital gains tax, which is a separate issue altogether. We're not going down that path. Well, it's a very little paragraph. You want a capital gains tax, or the opposition wants a capital gains tax. This side of the House doesn't. So that's really a policy divide. But I want to come to the points that I've never been in favour of a capital gains tax. The member can check the record going right back. I have never spoken for a capital gains tax. But let me come back to this bill and the questions from Mr Cosgrove, and I'd like to, and Mr Parker to some extent as well, I'd like to refer them perhaps to the back to the regulatory impact statement, which sets out a number of the conditions that are being applied to the changes, particularly regarding to AIL, to make sure that it is tightly focused, to make sure that the benefit is borne by the New Zealand borrower, who currently suffers the tax burden, rather than the offshore lender. And Mr Parker, I think it was, Mr Chairman, asked how much revenue was potentially being forgone through this measure. Now, the best estimate stated in the regulatory impact statement is, based on the last 3 years' movement in the bond market, about $5 million. So it's not a large sum of money. Mr Cosgrove then went on to say, well, why are we just zero rating AIL? Why aren't we abolishing it altogether? Effectively, the short answer is, actually, this is a slightly flippant answer, but there's good historical precedent for it. And I know the member wanted me to quote history. Many, many years ago, we struck a zero rate for stamp duty. We still actually have stamp duty on the books in New Zealand. I don't think that's a particularly good argument in the AIL case, but it's just a signal that there are some precedents. The point is that this is a new area of change. We're operating on the basis of the Capital Market Development Task Force recommendations. It was considered prudent at this stage to simply shift the rate from 2% back to zero. We will obviously keep a clear eye on how this works out in practice once the change is made. But frankly, we see it more as being about tidying up the process, making it neater and clearer, as the member acknowledged, and simply getting around what we think has been an impediment, which has imposed costs on New Zealand businesses, has not raised a great deal of revenue historically, and frankly is probably seen more as a disincentive than as a positive. Now, Mr Chairman, I haven't got time to go into all of the other issues that were raised in terms of things like financial transactions taxes and everything else which Mr Parker spoke of. They're way beyond the scope of the bill. They're not on the radar screen at this point. What we're focused on in this measure is the further progressive tidy up of our international tax rules. And can I conclude by quoting, and I think this time I'll try and get it right, the phrase of Dr Michael Cullen when this matter was first on the table. Notice that Dr Cullen paraphrased Star Trek when describing New Zealand's international tax rules, and he said, New Zealand boldly went where no country chose to follow. And that is a very good summary of the position we were in. This legislation effectively is a further part of the winding back of that to get us to a more realistic and credible position, and I'm grateful for the support of the opposition.